Now, sometimes with Bible stories in the Old Testament or New Testament, we can make two errors. The first is if it's a well-known story, maybe one that we've grown up hearing in Sunday school or we've seen movie or video adaptations, we think that we know the story and we don't actually pay attention to how it's actually written in the Bible. The classic scenario there is Christmas. We think we know the Christmas story so well, we don't realise how many parts of the way the story is told each year are not actually from the Bible, but are things that have been added in. The second error we can make, that even if we do know the original well, we can pull it out of its historical context, not realising what it actually meant to its original readers or how it fits into the big story of God at work through the whole scriptures. So that's why we're going to be spending 2 Sundays initially introducing the book of Ruth before we start to dig into the details. Today, we're going to hear the entire story from beginning to end. So we'll have a sense of the whole book, the whole story, and at the end I'll just highlight a few things about the book. Next Sunday, we'll look at the historical setting of Ruth and how it fits into and is related to the book of Judges. So let's hear the story of Ruth. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife, Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there, but Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. They lived there about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and had given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." And they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried? May the Lord do so to me and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go into the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favour." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers.' So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest." Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in any other field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you're thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favour in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I'm a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Then she said, "I have found favour in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants." And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain. And she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley, about 20 kilograms. And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, 'You shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvests, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz a relative with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." And she replied, "All that you say, I will do." So she went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went down to lie at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." And he said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And now it is true that I am a redeemer, yet there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good. Let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning." So she lay at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, "Let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor." And he said, "Bring the garment you're wearing and hold it out." So she held it out, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her. And she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "How did you fare, my daughter?" Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, "These 6 measures of barley he gave me, for he said to me, 'You must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law.'" She replied, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." Now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken came by. So Boaz said, "Turn aside, friend, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." So they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of the people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, that I may know, for there is no one beside you to redeem it, and I come after you. And he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. Then the Redeemer said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other. And this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, he drew off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and to Mahlon. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of this his native place. You are witnesses this day. Then all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. And may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighbourhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Aminadab. Aminadab fathered Nashon. Nashon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. Beautiful story, isn't it? Just going to spend a short time looking a bit more broadly now about how this book is a vital part of the Old Testament in its connections that it has with other books. Now, throughout history, the Old Testament, the books in the Old Testament have been compiled in different orders. Remember, each Bible book started its life as an individual scroll, only later to be bound into a collection like our modern Bibles. And so Ruth is in different places in different Old Testament collections, depending on how people saw the connections with other parts of the Bible. So Ruth is one of the collection of 5 scrolls, or megilloth, that in later Jewish life were read at 5 of their annual festivals. So the Song of Songs was read at Passover, Ruth was read at Pentecost, Lamentations at Tisha B'Av, which was a day of fasting to remember the temple being destroyed, the first temple, Ecclesiastes at the Feast of Tabernacles, and then Esther at Purim. Now, the significance of Ruth for Pentecost is that it celebrates, Pentecost is a celebration of the wheat harvest. And so it would have taken place in the time period that the story of Ruth is set. But Pentecost also remembers the Lord's covenant with Israel through the giving of the law. And as we'll see, Ruth gives us an example of this law being obeyed and the life and the freedom that that obedience produces. Another collection has Ruth in the first part of the Hebrew Bible, known as the writings. And Ruth in this collection is placed before Psalms. Notably then, that puts Ruth before Psalm 1, which depicts a blessed man who meditates daily on the law of the Lord and then seeks to live it out, and Psalm 2, which depicts the ideal king installed by God in Zion, of which we see Boaz becomes the ancestor of. So in the book of Ruth, we're presented with Boaz, this blessed man who knows and lives out the law and then becomes the father of the king of which Psalm 2 speaks, King David. Another collection, another compilation of these writings puts Ruth in a different place between Proverbs and then Song of Songs and Ecclesiastes. Some have said maybe it's sandwiched between Solomon's writings to highlight the Davidic line through Solomon, but more likely it was placed there because that way it would immediately follow Proverbs 31 and the celebration of a noble wife. When Boaz described Ruth to her in Ruth 3:11, he says, "All my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman." That Hebrew phrase, worthy woman, is found in only one other place in the New Testament, Proverbs 31:10, where it's translated as an excellent wife. Same phrase, an excellent wife who can find, she is more precious than jewels. So just from those two collections, we see that Ruth, in a sense, combines Psalm 1 and Proverbs 31. It shows us a living example of a woman and a man who are enabled to live in line with God's covenant. The 3 characters, Naomi, Ruth and Boaz, they exemplify a righteous observance of Mosaic laws about loving your neighbour. Those laws that we heard about leaving grain for the gleaners, so we didn't hear about it, we will, but those laws we did hear about, levirate marriage, making sure a widow doesn't go childless, marrying your brother's widow, and the laws about redemption of property for a poor relative. Well, our modern Bibles, based on the structure of the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament, has Ruth in what we call the history section between Judges and Samuel, a kind of link between the chaotic time of the Judges and the unfolding order of Samuel and Kings with the monarchy. And this placement here is not just about chronology. It's meant to show that hope wasn't lost during the time of the judges when Israel had no king and people did whatever was right in their own eyes. Naomi's husband is called Elimelech, which means God is king. So here's this man called God is king at a time when Israel were repeatedly forgetting or refusing to recognise the Lord as their king. And eventually they demand a human king. Now in Ruth, we see what at first appears to be a breaking of the law. A Jewish man gets married to a non-Israelite, forbidden in Deuteronomy 7, and he looks after the welfare of a Moabite. And there's a command in Deuteronomy 23 that says you are not to seek the prosperity or the well-being of the Moabites, since it was the Moabite king who tried to curse them through Balaam and who refused to provide for them as they passed through. So it seems like the law's been broken, yet the law also says he executes justice for the fatherless, the Lord this is, and the widow, and loves the sojourner, giving him food and clothing. Love the sojourner, therefore, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. Now, this isn't playing off different commands in the law as if they're contradictory. Don't marry a foreigner, don't look after the Moabites, love the sojourner. See, what we learn from Jesus when he was accused of breaking the law, of breaking the Sabbath and the laws about clean and unclean and food laws, what we learn from him is that the spirit of the law, which is love for God, love for neighbour, shows us how to truly fulfil the letter of the law. So when he asked, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or harm, to save life or to destroy it? He was teaching that doing good, working to do good to your neighbour, is actually a true fulfilment of the Sabbath, even if it requires you to, on the face of it, break a rule or a tradition of what constitutes work on the Sabbath. He showed us that actually work is a gift from God, and you can actually be working hard and doing it restfully. And love is of an even higher standard when we exercise that love, not merely towards a neighbour, but towards someone whom the strict letter of the law excludes. Someone we might be tempted to label as an enemy because their inclusion could potentially cause harm or inconvenience to us. And this supreme level of love is displayed in God's love to us in sending his Son to the cross. It shows that mercy triumphs over judgment. So what we might label as the harsher commands of the law, what they do is they highlight even more our need for mercy. And so they magnify when grace comes to bring about redemption and reconciliation. That's a principle that's been in place since the beginning. Remember when God told Adam not to eat the fruit from the tree, and he was told that he would die on the day that he ate of it? Yet after eating it, he was left standing, albeit fearful and ashamed and estranged from God. So we could say spiritually dead, yet he didn't physically die until he was 930 years old. It's reinforced not long after when God declares that he is going to wipe all of humanity off the face of the earth in a flood because of their exceedingly great wickedness. The Lord demands their wickedness deserves death, yet by his grace he saves 8 people who are just as wicked as everyone else, and through that he actually preserves and saves the human race. See, the inclusion of the unworthy through mercy is the main theme of the Bible. And it's got nothing to do with our modern ideas of tolerance, where we say, well, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and I'll just put up with you. No, it's about the actual transformation that comes through mercy and grace. See, Jesus kept the whole law, but not in the way that the Pharisees sought to keep it. The way they kept it was to say, make sure that those who are excluded by the law are definitely kept on the outside. Jesus kept the law by coming to those whom the law excluded because of sin or uncleanness, and he forgives their sin, and he removes their uncleanness so that now they are qualified to be included, not by their own self-righteousness, but by grace. So what we'll see is that the grace of God to Ruth that enabled her to say of him, my God, that came first. And then her inclusion becomes a seal or an external display of that grace to God's glory. Just a couple of other significant links then within the Old Testament. Ruth's inclusion in that collection called the Writings points us to another book in that collection, the book of Job. Naomi is in a way like a female Job. She loses everything, including property and family. But being a righteous person, not by her works, but by faith, she's finally vindicated with this blessing that comes in Ruth. Remember how the women said to Naomi that Ruth is to her more than 7 sons, which is a direct allusion to Job. Job had 7 sons and then he lost them. Here we are, born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He loses them, and then when he's restored again, he's given 7 sons. But something else there, he's also given 3 daughters back, but notice how they're named. The brothers aren't even named, and daughters are not normally named in biblical genealogies. Not only that, they're described as more beautiful than any other woman, which is probably a reference not just to their physical appearance, but to their character. But not only that, they receive an inheritance along with their brothers. Ruth is portrayed almost as if she's a 4th daughter of Job in that sense. So we see in the emptying of Naomi and then her refilling this Job-like figure. That's to show us not just the vindication of Naomi, but the vindication of God in his goodness and love. The other Old Testament connection which we should not miss is with Micah, specifically Micah chapter 5. You, O Bethlehem, Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from old, from ancient days. Therefore he shall give them up until the time when she who is in labour has given birth. Then the rest of his brothers shall return to the people of Israel, and he shall stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. and they shall dwell secure, for now he shall be great to the ends of the earth, and he shall be their peace. Now we know this as one of the great messianic prophecies read at Christmas time, quoted in Matthew 2, 5-6. Do you notice how Elimelech and Naomi and their sons were called Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah? Now Micah lived and prophesied at least 100 years after the book of Ruth was written, when the monarchy of the northern kingdom had declined into idolatry and the kingdom of Judah was not far behind. Both of them were facing the sure prospect of exile. So Micah's language here, or the Lord's language through Micah, we should say, is deliberate. He's deliberately alluding to the story of Ruth. The fact that the Davidic line, for all its glorious beginnings, had failed, pointed forward to yet another David, who, unlike the first David, his reign would last forever, and it would bring true and permanent peace and rest. So, above all the other lessons that we'll learn from the book of Ruth, we will see a type, a shadow of Jesus. Jesus, who is the kinsman redeemer. The one who became our kinsman. He became our closest living relative by taking on our human flesh and bone in order to redeem us, in order to act in selfless, self-giving love, in order to redeem his bride, the church.